Hey folks, welcome to the new channel for Buckhart Mountain Homestead. My name's Travis, and Buckhart Mountain Homestead is what we call our little family homestead. And we're starting a new channel, and hopefully we can produce some content that many of you will find useful or entertaining. And tune in. We're hoping to be able to put out enough content that's worth watching. We live quite a ways out in the woods and on several acres, have 4 kids at home, lots of little animals, and try to live as self-sufficient as we can. And so what we hope to show on this channel is that not that what you might find out there on other channels is wrong or not the best content, because there's a lot of great channels out there that will cover some of the same subjects we plan on covering. It's that we do things on a very low, tight budget. We don't have a lot of money, and most of that's because of our choice and the way that we live. And doing it the way we do things might be interesting to some people, because we find very cheap ways to live our lives and to make what we do successful and fun. Not that every time things are successful. Anyways, you'll probably see that later on in other videos. So, we'll be covering a lot of subjects. Basically, everything that goes on in our lives. This isn't intended to necessarily be a vlog, which just showcases our daily lives, but, reviews on maybe products we use, or ideas and little tips and tricks of how we've done things and what's worked for us and what doesn't, and so that maybe if you're considering living this life, or you're just starting out, or maybe you've been doing it for years, you can watch us and see, maybe get a good laugh in on us, or find some information that can help you out. We're in no way experts. We've lived in the country before, and for almost 2 years now we live in a fairly secluded, remote area in the Midwest. For the Midwest, where we live is considered very remote. But talk about things that's worked for us and our failures and mistakes, and maybe help you not make those same mistakes. It could be subjects of animals, whether farm animals or pets, gardening, cooking, building things, firearms, hunting, preparedness, preserving foods, things like that. That's going to kind of be what you would do in living out in the woods, kind of a modern homesteading situation. So those will be some of the subjects that we will cover from time to time. And like I said, I can't guarantee how often we'll post, but we will try to post often. My wife is in full support of this, but she's very camera shy, so it may be a while before I get her on this side of the camera. One thing that I want to talk about today, I'll try to make it quick so this isn't a long video, is cover maybe a few of the pros and cons of living like we do. Maybe you're considering this. You're considering leaving the city, or maybe you live kind of outside the city in a suburban area, or maybe out in the country and outside the city limits, but you want to live more in a remote, secluded area, and you're excited about it, but you're unsure about the change. And there is a change. There is some differences of living like this than most other ways that people, at least in America, live. And it is different than just living in the country. We lived, before we moved here, we lived outside of a small town in a very rural area, lots of farming around us. And there was nothing wrong necessarily with that, but we were closer to town, we were closer to a store, we were closer to our neighbors. Certain services, like say road clearing when the weather's bad, came closer to us than it is out here. Those types of things, if we had an emergency and had to call 911, the response time was a lot faster, because we were closer to civilization, even though it was just a small town. Living out like that, out how we do now, it's very different, but not bad. And I don't want to, when I list things that we found out that are, whether challenges or things to overcome or things to be ready for, they're not, in our, at least in our mind, they're not things that would deter us from living like this or regrets. It's just things that we've realized. And I'm not going to go too much on the pros, because most people can kind of figure those out. You're secluded. You live around nature. A lot closer to it than you would, especially in a urban situation. I can walk out my door and see wildlife, and walk trails out in the woods behind the house, and so it's, those are obvious benefits. We can kind of live how we want to live. We're not surrounded by the pollution and the noise and just civilization that can be very stressful and burdensome. So those are obvious pros. We have the land to provide more for ourselves. Those are obvious things, and I think most people would be able to kind of figure that out. And of course, it may vary slightly from regions, but for the most part, most of the positives of living out like this are going to be virtually the same. Some of the negatives, and I hate to even say negatives because it sounds bad, but it's just things that you need to kind of prepare yourself for, things to think about when choosing to move much further away from society. For an example, where we live right now, we're about 35 miles from the nearest town, and the nearest town is less than 2,000 people. There is a small little gas station, and it wouldn't even be considered a convenience store like you'd see in town. It's just a little, family-run gas station that's about 10 miles from us. They're not open very late, and it's basically gasoline, soda, chips, and a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk. That's the kind of stuff that they sell. And of course, you're going to pay more for it because it's, the only place to go. We are about 6.5, 7 miles from a paved road. So to give you that's kind of how we live. Our neighbors, the road that we live on is about 7, 8 miles long, and there's 4 families that live on that road. So we're quite spread out. Hills, it's very hilly because we live in the Missouri Ozarks, so there's hills between us and all of our neighbors. So that gives you kind of an idea of where we live, so that you can kind of get an idea of where we're coming from on things that I say. Some of the things to be prepared for, there's 3 main categories that I wanted to list. And one is transportation, vehicles. The other is food. And the third is going to be personal health, safety, first aid, boo-boos, those types of things. There's a few others, but those are your 3 main ones that you should consider. No matter if you have a junker or a brand spanking new vehicle, driving up and down these roads are harder on a vehicle than obviously driving on smooth pavement. And because we're so far away, I guess I could, but walking 35 miles to town is going to be a bit. So you need to have kind of redundancies, backup plans for your backup plans, and I like redundancies. And having a tire puncture kit, because anyone that lives on rocky roads, they put creek gravel down on these roads, and we have a lot of flint in the area, so it's very common to get a punctured tire, or drive over barbed wire or something, nails, screws, things like that. So it's very common. So you want a way to be able to fix a flat real quick, and of course you can use a spare tire, but maybe that gets a flat also. So we always keep a tire puncture kit in the car. We have one of those little air compressors that you plug into your cigarette lighter. It's not great, but it does the job. And that was something we learned very quickly when we moved out here. It's like, oh my gosh. In fact, I've actually had 3 flat tires in one day uh, from driving on the gravel roads. And then we got different tires and different vehicle, kind of took care of a lot of that problem. But vehicle maintenance, making sure you have things to fix like flats, battery chargers, things like that. Also gasoline. And this was I'm going to tell on my wife. When we first moved out like this, one day she went to town and she came home. Then we went to go somewhere again the next few days, and we were sitting on empty. And I was like, we're empty. We didn't get gas. And she's like, well, I had enough gas to get home. I figured we could get gas on the way out. I'm like, yeah, but we're like, you know, several miles from town. And luckily we had just enough. I know the vehicle was sucking fumes, but it made it to the gas station, the little gas station that was 10 miles away. And so what it made us both realize is that, if you do that in the city, you can come home on an empty tank because maybe a gas station is just a few blocks away. And even if you ran out of gas, you could walk there, or ride a bike, or take a bus, or take a taxi, or something like, there's always those kinds of options in the city, or ask your neighbor or something. Well, out here, we don't have a lot of those options. So we try to not have less than a half a tank in our vehicle, which for various other purposes is a good idea. But we also keep a couple of 5-gallon gas cans available here at the house. And of course we have lawnmowers and other equipment that uses that gas in those cans, but we try to always make sure that there's 5 to 10 gallons of gas here at the house minimum. That's the minimum, so that if that ever happens again, we're like, okay, we can put gas in. And then it also saves you money because when you're buying gas way out in the middle of nowhere, the few places that have it, you're going to pay a lot more. On average, between 20 and 30 cents a gallon more. So you save money also, if you get low on gas and like, man, I need to get gas, so I'll just go down to that local little store where you're paying 20 to 30 cents more a gallon. So instead, the few times we go into town, we buy extra gas, put it in the gas cans, and that way we're also saving money. The other was food. So, this may have been a common thing many years ago where people had enough food in their home to last a while, a few days, maybe in a few weeks. But in modern times, most people don't have more than 2 or 3 days of food supply in their home. And while, sure, we can be going to the store, you're going to spend a lot more money. I mean, you got to factor in gas costs. So if you're going to the store every 2 or 3 days and it's a 35-mile trip to the nearest grocery store, there's 70 miles that you've just driven just to go get a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread or, whatever it is. So, we've become very much more prepper minded. We weren't really, and I definitely don't call us preppers, but I guess most people probably would. Even if you're not into that, if you choose to live out like this, you definitely need to start investigating, looking into, reading, things that maybe people that are more preppers do, because it will come in handy. Doesn't mean you have to have 6 months, a year, 5 years of food, but I would definitely suggest having, several weeks of food supply. In bad weather, last spring, we had a 100-year flood here, and it was about, 3 or 4 days that people down this road just couldn't leave because the creeks flooded so high, you were kind of stuck here. So you never know if, ice storm, things like that, and of course they don't come out and clear these roads. You have to be prepared, and it also saves you money, not going to the store every 2 or 3 days. So we do a once a month shopping trip. We're hoping to eventually knock that down. Maybe it's every other month or quarterly. It's kind of hard still with small children, but those are our goals. And then the third main thing is personal safety, health, first aid, that type of stuff, emergency medical stuff. You absolutely have to have first aid medical supplies on hand. Not just for the little cuts and bruises, because you're going to get those from cutting wood and working in the garden, working with it. You're going to get injured more. But also, you know, there's venomous snakes out here, other wildlife, things like that. And because we're so far away, help is a lot further away. The average response time where we're at for law enforcement and fire and rescue is around 40-45 minutes. So, you know, we're actually I can be to the nearest hospital faster than an ambulance can be at our house. And unless there's something that, I think that, they need to be stabilized, most likely we're going to just take ourselves if we're able to. And I have medical training. I was an EMT for a while when I was in law enforcement, so I do at least have that. And have a good, first aid trauma kit around, because you do live quite a ways out, and you're going to get injured. The kids are going to get injured. And then there are actually dangerous things. We have bears around here, mountain lions, coyotes, lots of venomous snakes. So you need to have those types of things around. There's other things that you should also consider when living out like this. Having the proper tools, and I'm very big on redundancy. Having backup plans for my backup plans. So if you use a certain fuel source to heat your home, try to have a couple of backups. We use only wood heat to heat our home, and we have hundreds of acres. It's not all, that's not what we own, but there are hundreds, there's actually thousands of acres of wood surrounding us. And then we have our small piece of land. So I have access to wood, obviously, if we need it, but I also have redundancy plans. I have a propane heater, and I have a kerosene heater, and I keep those fuel sources on hand so that they're redundancies. If for some reason, the fireplace, I couldn't use it for whatever reason, have things on hand, more emergency purpose. Even if you're moving out here and you're not that kind of prepper, like I said earlier, prepper, emergency, type minded, you just want to live out here, retire, just enjoy the beauty, you still need to have these things. Flashlights, flashlight batteries, because when it's dark out here, it's dark. There's no street lights or anything like that. Things go bump in the night out here. They're usually possums and raccoons, but still. They may get in your chicken coop. Those types of things you need to be able to see. Other things that you use in your home, try to have spares, backups, extras, batteries, things to repair it, those types of things, because it's much easier and cheaper to just have them on hand than have to make an emergency, trip to town. What we do when we budget, we try to say, okay, we're only going to go to town this many times a month. So, we try to figure in what we would need to get. And of course, if you're poor like us, you don't have the money to just say, okay, I'm just going to buy everything. But, like, say, dog food or cat food or chicken, scratch, things like that. Try to buy a little extra each time so that you can have that kind of build up. And it makes it so much easier when you need something, need to repair something, flashlights go dead, the dog runs out of dog food, those types of things. You're not making an emergency trip, or wasting gas just to run to town or whatever. Those are some things that a lot of people don't think about when they move really far out into the countryside or in the mountains, the woods, those types of things. You definitely need to learn to be more self-sufficient. Protection, although we don't really have to worry too much about like two-legged prowlers around here because we live pretty far out. It is possible this day and age. It's not like it was 50 years ago. Those kind of people do come out into the woods to do their nefarious things. But the main thing that we have to worry about is predators, predator animals. And so if it's, like I said, if you need medical help, it's a while away. If you need police help, it's a long while away. Someone's breaking in your home. It's not like in town where the police may be able to get there in less than 5 minutes. Out here, it's 45 minutes. In fact, I spoke with the sheriff's department, the sheriff himself, once, and he told me, he said, because he knew where we lived, and he said, you guys do know that there's the response time out there is quite a while, because we're on one side of the county and the sheriff's department's all the way on the other side of the county, and it's a very large county, and it's all gravel roads between here and there. And I said, yeah. He said, you need to make sure that you have adequate protection. He said, because we can't get there in time. Because, the sheriff and I was talking about this. He said, we're very pro-gun in our sheriff's department, because most of the people in the county, they have to kind of take their protection, that responsibility on themselves. They know that the sheriff's department is not going to be able to come here and protect us. They're spread out. There's only a few of them, because it's a very low population county and a very large, land mass of county. So those types of things. You may be anti-gun and you want to live in a remote woods. Sorry, you really should have some type of firearm to protect yourself against predators or, intruders, things like that. So these are types of things that I just want people to think about. Those of you that's wanting to move, that's thinking about it, especially if you have children, there are a lot of things to think about. I don't think any of them personally are reasons for me to not move like this, but you do need to become prepared to live like this, because there is a little bit of work to it. There is, some inconvenience to it. Now, in my mind, my wife's, our family's mind, the benefits far outweigh those. But there are things to make your lives a lot easier, and a lot of it's just small things. So I'll probably cover some more later on in a video. This is just an introductory video, and to kind of get the channel going. So I hope some of those things helped out. If you have ideas, leave them in the comments. I'll try to respond and throw some ideas in the comments also. And do some, more videos. I think one of my next one, I'm going to do a product review. We don't get paid, of course, to doing that, especially because we're just starting out. But my wife got me a new pocket knife, and I really like it. So I think I might do a video on that. I think it's kind of cool knife. So I'll probably do my next video on that. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I hope you like and subscribe and stick with us, and we can put out more content and share with you. This is Travis from Buckhart Mountain Homestead. Have a great day. We'll see you guys.